You know, you may be going through a time where you wonder if God is even treating you fairly. Well, today on Daily Renewal, we want to talk about what our attitude should be in regards to what God has given us. Hello everybody, this is Pastor Lyle and welcome to Daily Renewal. We're going to continue our series today on Jesus is King. And I want to encourage you, if you're new to the program, I want to encourage you to subscribe to our channel below. That helps us and also helps you in being able to see some of the other videos in the series and the 100 plus videos that we've done for Daily Renewal up until now. Well, in the subject of Jesus being King, I want to look today at the idea of times when we feel like maybe our King has not treated us fairly. So let's take a look at this story in Matthew 25. And it starts in verse 14. And I want to encourage you to read the whole thing. We're going to go through this a little bit today, but I want to encourage you to read it on your own. In this story, Jesus likens the kingdom of heaven to a man traveling to a far country, and he calls his servants unto him, and to one servant he gives 5 talents, to one servant he gives 2 talents, and to another servant he gives 1 talent. And then he comes back later on, and the servants, 2 of them are really excited. The first one comes back, and he says to the landowner, he says, look, you gave me 5, and I have earned 5 more. And there's an indication here that he's excited to have the landowner come back and show him what he's produced. And you know, this is really important because one of the things that I've noticed in my life is, you know, Jesus has done a great work in my life. And one of the great rewards that I have isn't just the fact that he's done things in my life, but it's when I see that I'm able to return something, to give something back to him, that brings life to me as well, knowing that I'm reciprocating in what God has done in me by bringing and doing something to see increase to his kingdom. And you know, when we look at the idea of Jesus being our King, if you're looking to have a vibrancy in your walk with God, I want to encourage you. Do something with what God has given you. And so we see this first servant. He's excited to bring back the increase from what God has given him. And we also see this with the second servant. You know, he was given 2 talents and he brought increase as well. And there was an excitement with him. And that excitement also was returned from the landowner, and we can see that by the fact that not only was he excited about what he had gotten back from them, but as a result, he brought increase to them because they did something with what he had given them. But now I want to pick up the story in verse 24 with the third servant. The third servant, it says here, it says, then he who had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you had not sown, and gathering where you have not scattered seed. And I was afraid, and went and hid your talent in the ground. Look, there you have what is yours. But his Lord answered and said to him, you wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I had not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed? So you ought to have deposited my money with the bankers, and at my coming I would have received back my own with interest. Therefore, take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. And cast that unprofitable servant into the outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Well, when we begin to look at these 3 servants, the attitude between the first 2 and the last one is quite different. You can sense the excitement of the return of the king. And of the return of the king, there was an excitement because they had been obedient to what he had asked them to do. And then from there would have been even more excitement because there was an increase in their life. They brought joy to the king because of their obedience. But when we see the response of the third servant, it was quite different how he looked, how he perceived the king or the landowner to be. Well, I don't want to be too hard on this guy yet because I want to put ourselves in his shoes. Now, we see here that he said, the first thing he says is, he says, Lord, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. Well, why would he say that? What was the indicator that he knew this to be true? Well, we don't know any of the backstory, and this was a story told by Jesus. Well, I can tell you right now that being one of these three servants, if you were the last one, if I was in his shoes, I'll tell you what the first indicator was that the landowner was somebody who reaped where he had not sown and gathered where he had not scattered seed. What would make him say that? Well, I want you to picture yourself in this position. You're standing with two other of your peers, and the one that you call king comes and stands before you and says, hey, I'm going to go on a trip. And I want to give you guys something. I want you to do something with what I give you. And he looks at what the guy to your far left, and he says, here, I want to give you 5 talents. And I want you to go do something with them. And he'd be excited. And then he looks at the second guy and says, you know what? I'm going to give you 2. Well, you'd kind of look and go, well, okay, the first guy got 5 and the next guy only gets 2. Okay. Well, the second guy kind of got robbed, but, you don't see the second guy complaining. And then he stands in front of you. He gave the first guy 5. He gives the second guy 2. And he looks at you and he gives you 1. What's your response? I know that most human beings would look at that and say, what the heck is that? That's not fair. Why would you give that guy 4 more than me? And it's bad enough that you gave him 4 more, but you gave the guy next to me 2? You only give me 1 to work with? We look at this idea of when that landowner came back, the first response again, Lord, I knew that you're a hard man, reaping where you had not sown. Well, what is that word reaping? That word reaping is you're taking something. The word sown means you're planting or you're giving us something. In other words, he's saying you are taking something where you have not given. Could it be that this guy was looking at this and he was offended because of the fact that you're expecting me to give back to you when really you haven't given me all that much? In comparison to the first guy, you've given me nothing to work with. In comparison to the second guy, you've almost given me the same, but you know what? You have put me number 3 out of 3. You have given me absolutely nothing, very little to work with. And then interestingly enough, his answer was, he says, I was afraid and went and hid your talent in the ground. And he says, here's back what you've given me, with no interest. Now, the landowner's response is he called him a wicked and lazy servant. Why? He says, you should have at least deposited my money with the bankers so that I could receive interest. Well, why was this third guy afraid? What was he afraid of? Was he afraid he was going to get beaten? No. I'll tell you what he was afraid of. He was afraid that landowner or that king was so unjust that if he did gain anything, if he had taken that talent, then anything he would have gained, he was scared that king was so unjust that he was going to take even what he had gained. His whole idea of thinking was that the king was so unfair, that he didn't like him, that there was something wrong with the relationship to the point where he doesn't look at me the same as he does the other two guys, or I would have been blessed with the same amount to do something with as them. Well, how many times have you found yourself in the place where you don't want to use what God has given you because you're scared that if you use it, you might even lose what little you have? Well, if I do get a little bit of gain, God could just, he'll just take it away from me. Often we find ourselves in the place where I think we do wonder, does God really care? God doesn't seem to treat me as well as he treats other believers. My ministry's not as big. I don't have as much money. How come I'm sick and somebody else isn't? Well, we have to understand, first of all, that we got to take our eyes off what's going on in other people's lives. God knows all of the abilities that we have. He chose to give these talents out according to the abilities that these guys had. If you read it, you'll see that. You might say, God's the one that gives abilities. How come I don't have the same kind of abilities? I just seem to have been given a raw deal. No, you haven't been. Don't look at what other people have been given and judge yourself upon that. And definitely don't judge your king upon that. We have to get our eyes off of looking at what other people have. And the other key principle that we see here that this third guy didn't understand is this third guy wasn't even willing to use what he considered the little bit that the king had given him. It was very obvious that if he would have chosen even to do something with what he'd been given, then this king would have multiplied what he'd been given. But he chose not to use it in any way, shape, or form to bring increase to the king's kingdom. He was more concerned with losing what he had because he was looking at his own kingdom, his own household. Well, what if he takes it away? This is not a just man. And this is the way he looked at it. This is not a just man. He could take away even the little bit that I have. And we have to look at what God has given us, whether we consider it to be little or much. And we have to be willing to say, you know what? I'm going to use this for my king and his kingdom. And trust that with whatever God has given you, if you use it to bring increase to his kingdom, he will bring increase to you. In Luke 16:10, it sums it up by saying this. It says, he who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much. And he who is unjust in what is least is unjust also in much. If you have your eyes on what's happening in other people's lives, and by the way, a lot of times, when we look at people's lives, you may think they're doing real well, but they're not doing near as well as what it shows on your Facebook report. We have to get our eyes off of what is happening in other people's lives and concentrate on what God is doing and what he's giving to you in your life. Are you faithful with what maybe you consider to be little? Are you faithful with what he has given you? And trust in this, my friend, that if you are faithful in what is least, in what is little, God will bring increase to your life. But you've got to trust him. You've got to do something with it you've been given. Financially, well, I don't have much. Do something with what you've been given. If you want help in your finances, then you can't let your money be your God. Use it to do something to bring increase to the kingdom of God. With your time, your ministry. Well, I don't have much. Do something with what he has given you to bring increase to the kingdom, and you will see increase in your ministry. Whatever it is, if you seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, all these things will be added unto you. But you have to be kingdom minded. Get your mind off your own kingdom and get all your thinking and your focus onto him and sowing into his kingdom, and he will bring increase in your life. Well, I hope you got something out of that today. Again, if you did, I want to encourage you to press the like button below. Feel free to make comments about how these videos are impacting your life. Also, consider being a subscriber to our channel. You can like us on Facebook, and we are on Instagram and Twitter as well. If you're in the Kamloops area, I want to encourage you, drop by River City Church. We would love to have you. Having said that, God bless you, and have a great day.